Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a dusty old shed in Chicago, the air was thick with the smell of damp wood and rusty metal. Saturday auctions always drew a curious crowd, but this time it wasn't the antiques that caught the eye, it was the abandoned animals. Dogs and cats, left behind, some sick, others thin and trembling, were waiting for a second chance. Jason Carter, 24, entered the shed with a mixture of curiosity and compassion. He hadn't come looking for a perfect dog. He only wanted to save a life, to give a home to someone rejected by the world. At the back of a row of cages, his eyes met those of a brown dog with sad eyes. The dog curled up in on itself, barely moving, as if it had lost all hope. No one seemed interested in him. Stares averted, whispers criticized his thinness and fear. But Jason sensed something in that look, a silent plea for love, patience, and trust. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and made a gesture that would change his life and the dog's forever. "I'll take it," he said, and paid $5. This rejected dog would become more than a companion. He would become a symbol of courage, loyalty, and resilience, transforming not only Jason's life, but the lives of everyone who crossed their paths. Jason walked home with the dog in his arms. The small apartment was modest but warm, with sunlight filtering through the curtains and an old couch covered with a blanket. He gently placed the dog on the floor. The dog instinctively backed away, trembling all over. Its eyes were filled with suspicion and sadness. Jason crouched down to its level, speaking softly. "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. I'll never hurt you." The dog sniffed the air around him, but didn't approach. Jason took out a small bowl and put some water and some food inside. Rusty, that's what Jason decided to call him, looked at the bowl hesitantly. After several minutes, he slowly approached and ate, but still kept his eyes fixed on Jason. That night, Jason prepared a little corner for Rusty with soft blankets. The dog curled up there, but his trembling didn't stop. Jason sat beside him, gently stroking his head. "I promise you'll never be alone again," he whispered. As the hours passed, a fragile but sincere bond began to form. Rusty, though traumatized by his past, felt the security and love emanating from Jason. The young man, for his part, already felt he had found a faithful friend, a companion who would change his life as much as he would change the dog's. The next morning, the sun rose over the apartment, illuminating the little duo. Jason smiled as he watched Rusty tentatively explore his new surroundings, curiosity beginning to replace fear. It was the beginning of an adventure that would change not only their daily lives, but also everyone who heard their story. Over the next few days, Jason watched Rusty closely. Every gesture, every blink, every tiny movement seemed to tell a story of fear and loneliness. But Jason knew that with patience and love, Rusty could regain his confidence. Every morning, Jason prepared a breakfast dish and placed it next to Rusty, speaking softly to encourage him to eat. Slowly, the dog accepted not only the food, but also the petting. The trembling began to diminish, and his eyes began to shine with a hint of curiosity and hope. One afternoon, Jason decided to take Rusty to the park for the first time. Rusty hesitated as he stepped out of the apartment, his paws warily brushing the sidewalk. But as soon as he felt the grass beneath his paws and saw other dogs running and playing, a mixture of fear and excitement crossed his eyes. Jason gently released the leash and said, "Go explore." Rusty began to trot, cautiously at first, then more confidently. He sniffed every bush, every tree, and watched the children throw balls. A little girl approached and held out her hand. Rusty, after a moment's hesitation, slowly stepped forward and sniffed her, letting his tail twitch timidly. This simple yet moving moment made Jason smile. He realized that Rusty was no longer the broken dog he'd bought at auction. Every step he took outside was a victory over fear and abandonment. At the end of the day, back at the apartment, Rusty lay down next to Jason, as if to say thank you. Jason petted him and whispered, "You're amazing, Rusty, and this is just the beginning." And so the real healing began. Rusty learned to trust again, and Jason discovered the depth of love a rejected dog could offer to someone who could see beyond appearances. Within weeks of arriving, Rusty had become more confident. He followed Jason around the apartment, sat at his feet while he worked, and seemed to understand every word he said. But what Jason didn't yet know was how protective Rusty truly was. One night, while Jason was fast asleep, a loud thud sounded near the front door. Rusty leaped out of his basket and began barking furiously, a deep, insistent bark that startled Jason awake. The young man got up and saw a shadowy figure trying to open the door. Jason felt his heart race. He had no way to defend himself, but Rusty, his fur bristling and his posture firm, stepped in front of him, growling with an intensity no intruder would dare ignore. The man hesitated, surprised by the dog's courage and presence, then fled into the night. Jason, still trembling, knelt down to pet Rusty. "You saved me, my friend, you really saved me," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Rusty, as if in response, rested his head on Jason's arm, his eyes shining with loyalty and pride. That night, Jason understood something fundamental: Rusty wasn't just a rescued dog. He was a sensitive, courageous human being with a huge heart, ready to do anything to protect those he loved. The next day, Jason told his neighbors and friends about the incident. Everyone was impressed and moved by Rusty's courage. The story of the rejected dog who had defended his owner began to spread, marking the beginning of a reputation that would soon spread throughout the community. Jason smiled as he watched Rusty bask in the sun. He knew their bond was now unbreakable and that this rejected dog was worth far more than anyone could have imagined. Over time, Jason realized that Rusty was not only brave, but also incredibly intelligent. The dog understood simple commands even before Jason clearly spoke them and seemed to anticipate his intentions. One night, while watching rescue dog videos online, Jason had an idea: what if Rusty could become an alert or rescue dog? The next day, he enrolled Rusty in a specialized obedience class. From the very first session, the trainer, an experienced man named Tom Reynolds, was amazed by the dog's abilities. "I've never seen a dog learn so quickly," he said, watching Rusty execute complex commands with precision. Rusty ran, jumped, and performed exercises that even some adult dogs struggled to master. Jason spent every afternoon at the training center, patiently working with Rusty. They quickly became an inseparable team. The trainer, impressed by their complicity, suggested they participate in rescue simulations. During the first simulation, Rusty immediately located a person hiding behind obstacles, barking to signal his position. Everyone watching was impressed. This rejected dog had a natural talent for protecting and alerting. One night, back home, Jason sat down beside Rusty and said, "You see, my friend, no one believed in you, and look what you've become. You have a gift." Rusty, lying at his feet, laid his head on his knees, as if to accept his master's silent recognition. This chapter in their lives revealed a profound truth: sometimes, the people the world rejects are those with the greatest courage and potential. Rusty was no longer just an abandoned dog, he was a hero in the making, and Jason knew their adventure was only just beginning. One sunny Saturday, Jason decided to take Rusty to a community event in Chicago's Central Park. It was a day of games, music, and children's workshops, and Jason wanted to show Rusty the outside world in a positive light. Rusty, more confident than ever, trotted beside Jason, his tail twitching with curiosity and excitement. Neighborhood residents, who knew the story of the rejected dog, stopped to admire Rusty's dramatic transformation. Children approached to pet him and throw balls, and Rusty played with contagious joy, slowly forgetting the scars of his past. Suddenly, a scream rang out near the park's lake. A 6-year-old boy had fallen into the water and was struggling to get out. The adults panicked, desperately trying to find a way to intervene. But Rusty, reacting instinctively, quickly leaped toward the lake. Without hesitation, he swam out to the boy and gently grabbed him by the sleeve of his life jacket, guiding him to shore. The stunned spectators applauded and cheered the dog's courage. Jason ran to join Rusty and the boy, his heart filled with pride and gratitude. "You were amazing, Rusty," he exclaimed, petting him, while the boy hugged Rusty. That day changed everything. The local press, present to cover the event, photographed Rusty and Jason. The story of the rejected dog-turned-hero spread throughout town. Neighbors, inspired by their story, began to adopt a new perspective on abandoned animals and the value of perseverance and trust. Rusty, once trembling and scared, was now celebrated by the community. But for Jason, the most important thing wasn't fame or recognition, it was seeing the smile on Rusty's face, free and happy, and knowing that they had found in each other a true friend for life. After Rusty's exploit at the park, Jason began to realize that their story was resonating with more people than he ever imagined. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers would come to him and ask how he'd managed to gain the trust of a rejected dog. Everyone wanted to know the secret to this unique relationship. One evening, while they were walking through the neighborhood, a little girl approached timidly. "Sir, how did you get your dog to listen to you and trust you?" she asked. Jason smiled and replied, with a lot of patience, love, and respect. "Everyone deserves a second chance." Rusty, sitting beside him, looked up as if in agreement. Inspired by these exchanges, Jason decided to get more involved. He began spending his afternoons at an animal shelter, helping to feed the dogs and cats, walk them, and give them attention. Rusty always accompanied him, and the other animals seemed to sense his reassuring presence. Some, traumatized by their past, were also beginning to emerge from their fear. One day, while petting a small black dog, Jason realized a profound truth: Rusty hadn't just changed him. He'd changed his outlook on the world and on the capacity of humankind to heal from abandonment and suffering. The lessons of patience, compassion, and courage he received daily from Rusty were more powerful than any training or life experience. Rusty, meanwhile, continued to evolve. His gaze was now confident, his coat shiny, and his gestures full of tenderness. Jason smiled every time he saw him interacting with other animals or shelter visitors. He knew that this rejected dog had accomplished much more than he had imagined. He had become a silent messenger of love and resilience for the entire community. This chapter in their lives showed Jason that sometimes saving an animal is also saving yourself, and that true love can transform the deepest wounds into strength and hope. Even after several months of happiness and newfound confidence, Rusty hadn't forgotten his past. Sometimes a sudden noise, the slamming of a door, or even the sound of a loud voice was enough to make him recoil and tremble. Jason watched these reactions with silent concern, knowing that full healing would take time. One night, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Rusty huddled against Jason, his eyes wide and full of fear. The flashes of lightning echoed memories known only to him. Jason stroked him gently, whispering, "I'm here, Rusty. You have nothing to fear anymore." Gradually, the dog calmed down, feeling the love and security emanating from his master. The next day, Jason decided to take him to a quiet park, away from the noise and bustle, to help him face his fears. They walked slowly, Jason speaking gently and Rusty moving forward cautiously but purposefully. Every step he took, every controlled bark at an unfamiliar object or noise, was a small victory over his traumatic past. At the shelter, Rusty also showed his progress. He approached fearful dogs, reassuring them with his presence, and encouraging them to interact. Jason watched this transformation with wonder. Despite his own injuries, Rusty was becoming a guide for other traumatized animals, showing them that fear could be overcome. These moments reminded Jason that resilience doesn't come from the absence of pain, but from the ability to move forward in spite of it. Rusty had been rejected, abused, and alone, but with patience, love, and support, he continued to heal and inspire all who crossed his path. Jason, watching Rusty fall asleep that night, thought, "You are stronger than you think, my friend. And together, we can overcome anything." A few weeks after the park incident, Rusty and Jason's reputation began to spread. Neighbors talked about the brave dog who had saved a child and inspired so many. But what they didn't know yet was the impact this story would have on a larger scale. One morning, Jason received an unexpected call from a local reporter, Samantha Blake, who had heard about Rusty through word of mouth. She wanted to write an article about the dog who, rejected and abandoned, had become a hero. Jason, a little hesitant at first, agreed to tell their story. On the day of the interview, Samantha watched closely as Rusty interacted with the children and other animals. She was moved to tears by the dog's transformation. "It's incredible," she whispered, feverishly taking notes. No one would have believed that a rejected dog could have such courage and kindness. The article appeared in the local newspaper, along with photos of Rusty and Jason. It quickly went viral. People came not only to admire Rusty, but also to be inspired by the story of resilience and love hidden behind his faithful brown eyes. Calls poured into the shelter where Jason worked. Families wanted to adopt abandoned dogs, encouraged by Rusty's transformation. The volunteers were overwhelmed but thrilled. The story of a single rejected dog had sparked a wave of compassion and solidarity throughout the city. For Jason, the recognition wasn't about glory, but a reminder of the importance of giving second chances. Rusty, lying at his feet, looked up as if to say, "We did it together." And Jason knew that every moment spent caring for him, reassuring him, and offering him love had paid off far beyond their expectations. So Rusty was no longer just an adopted dog, he had become a living symbol of courage, loyalty, and the impact that a rejected person can have on the world. With the attention and inspiration Rusty had generated, Jason decided to take another step. He began regularly visiting local shelters to meet other abandoned dogs. His goal, to give them a second chance, just as he had done for Rusty. The first dogs he brought home were hesitant and wary, some still trembling with every movement. But Rusty, loyal and patient, immediately became their guide. He welcomed them gently, showed them that home was a safe place, and taught them simple gestures of trust and friendship. One morning, Jason witnessed a scene that made him smile and melt with emotion. Rusty stood between two shy dogs, a small brown Labrador and a white female Cocker Spaniel. He was showing them how to play with a ball, how to approach humans without fear. The newcomers followed his movements with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. Jason thought, "You've become much more than a dog, you're a mentor, a guide, a hero to them too." Jason's house gradually became a home for these rejected dogs, each with their own painful past, each with their own wounds. Together, they formed an unlikely but united family, where loyalty and love trumped fear and loneliness. The local community followed their adventures closely. Neighbors came to admire the troop and offer food, toys, or blankets. Rusty and his companions had transformed not only their own lives, but also the lives of everyone around them. Jason, observing the scene, realized that every sacrifice and every moment of patience had been worth it. The house was no longer just an apartment, it was a refuge, a haven of peace where the rejected could be reborn, guided by Rusty, the dog who had changed their destinies. Over time, Rusty and Jason's story became more than just a local tale, it inspired the entire city of Chicago. Newspapers, social media, and even schools told the story of the rejected dog who had found a home and transformed the lives of those he touched. Rusty was no longer just a rescued animal, he had become a living symbol of resilience, courage, and unconditional love. Jason continued to take in more abandoned dogs, each with their own story and wounds. Rusty, now calm and confident, served as a mentor to each newcomer. The once shy and fearful animals learned to play, trust, and love through his example. Jason's home became a haven for those who had been rejected, a place where patience and compassion triumphed. One day, at a City Hall event to raise awareness about pet adoption, Jason and Rusty were invited as guests of honor. Rusty, true to form, was brave and gentle, captivating everyone's attention. Jason spoke, "This isn't just a story about one dog, but about all beings who deserve a second chance. Rusty taught me that love can transform fear, pain, and abandonment into strength and hope." Applause echoed through the room. Families in attendance decided to adopt abandoned animals, inspired by Rusty and Jason's example. The duo had shown that even a rejected dog could become a hero, not only through their actions, but also through their ability to inspire and change people's hearts. That evening, back home, Jason watched Rusty surrounded by his companions, dogs of all sizes and breeds, all happy, playing and resting in safety. He smiled, his heart filled with gratitude. You started out as an outcast, Rusty, and look what you've become. You've saved more than lives, you've saved hearts. Rusty raised his brown eyes to Jason and rested his head on his knees, silent but expressive. In that moment, Jason knew their story was only the beginning of a legacy of compassion and courage. Together, they had proven that even those the world had forgotten could shine and inspire generations. And so, a rejected dog at auction became a hero to an entire town, showing that love, patience, and second chances could transform everyone's destiny.